All right, here we go. Wow, was having some last-minute audio issues just in time. Welcome to Sportsbook Reviews, Facebook Live, and it does look like my audio is working. Of course, we were not here last week. We'll tell you a quick story how things got pretty interesting. So last week, I was at a bar mitzvah. My wife's cousin's kid had a bar mitzvah, had a great time. The only problem is you shouldn't really schedule a wedding or a bar mitzvah during football season. So Sunday night, it's supposed to be a 2-hour flight. I live in Atlanta. Been in all the newspapers. You may have heard the Atlanta airport got shut down. So it was supposed to be a 2-hour flight, turned into running with chickens without our head. Made the decision instead to make an 850-mile drive instead. And that was crazy. No sleep. And, unfortunately, my mother-in-law did have surgery on Tuesday. The most important thing is her health. It definitely could have been a little bit better, but all in all, it went pretty well. But there's no way around it. Collaterally just added to a lack of sleep. But here we are, and the good news is, did not affect my picks at all. As I said, I'll give up on sleep. I will not give up on my research and work. We are 20-5 with all picks, including 9-0 with Wise Guy Plays. Such a crazy day. And the single most important thing is today is the first day that I have an adult child. That's right. 18 years ago today, I became a father for the first of 3 times. Happy birthday to my son, Andrew. Love that kid. Love that adult. But let's get to it. The tailgate party. Thank you for those of you joining us today. I know we did go on that hiatus. I did not want to miss last week's show, but I couldn't get it. Still put the family first. And as I said, things have been going quite well. Why don't we preview it's like I said, it was crazy today. You do some audio tests and not quite sure why, there we go. And I do have my SBR text, but, got that audio problem fixed just in time. Houston, Fresno State. Why don't we take a look at the bowl game first? And those of you who are out there, make sure you do, check in and say hi to us. Fresno State is +9 against the spread margin, 3rd best record in the country. At 10-2-1, that is against the spread record as opposed to margin, again, which some of you do know as the sweat barometer. And they are very good there. Fresno State has gone under 10-3-1 by an average of 9.1 points per game. Now, the AAC is 3-11 in games that are expected to be close, that is within 0.5 of a pick'em. And that would say to go against Houston. And, of course, I forgot. Crazy, hectic day. Indeed, this is probably not my absolute best shirt when it comes to, thank you, Gil. I was just about ready to check, like I said, because today's been slightly more hectic than usual. I was going to make sure this was going out live, but all indications it are, and thank you for saying hi, Gil. There we are. So everyone who can give us a like, please do so. It will help us with the exposure. Now let's get to the NFL, and I will have a free pick on this report. The Browns and the Bears, winless teams, week 15 or later, not getting at least a touchdown, are actually 4-0 straight up and against the spread, and getting 3 or more each time. They won by an average of 6.5 points per game. So this is a case where there's a reason I know that the Browns are actually a sharp play. Now, the Browns have frankly been a sharp play each of the last 2 years, and last year we were burnt by the Browns quite a few times. And we did find out that the outlier was teams that have lost at least 21 out of 22 games straight up on a lot of our systems that say go with really bad teams. If you're joining us for the first time, essentially the NFL is the #1 regression to the mean sport when it comes to handicapping. Betting on bad teams, and betting against good teams is a good idea. Betting against hot teams and betting on cold teams more times than not is a good idea. But the Browns have been that exception. They have not been a very good spread team. And we did find out that the exception to most of our great systems is when a team over multiple years has lost 21 out of 22 straight up, which would apply to the Browns. But that system, there is a system that says the Browns could be a very good play. This is their chance to win straight up. And we'll talk about it in a moment, but I will give you a hint. We do like to do the public consensus. The Browns are a rare case where they are public consensus as an underdog. Usually the public loves favorites. And when they do love underdogs, they generally love quality underdogs. So this is really rare where the public is loving a bad underdog. But now, here's that angle I told you about. Teams that lost 20, all right, I think I said 21 out of 22. It's actually 22 of 23 straight up are a go-against of 26-8 against the spread. But when those two angles go head-to-head, I told you that this is a case where winless teams, under this circumstance, in Week 15 or later, actually 4-0 straight up. The one time it's going head-to-head, where they've also lost 22 out of 23 straight up, that team did win. And yeah, Gil, that's a definite possibility to say the least, as the Browns have been an awful team, but this is a good chance for them to win. And I do know of a journeyman handicapper who that was always kind of his theory. When an awful team has a rare chance to win, a winless team has a rare chance to win, go with them. And the computer says that's really not a bad angle. And look, let's face it, the Bears, whether or not they really have the quarterback of the future, is highly questionable. Mitch Trubisky's been very inconsistent. He's not a very good quarterback. Keep in mind the Bears are also 0-7 as a favorite. The Bears have gone under 10-4, which is tops in the league as far as unders are concerned. But they're a minus 4.7 margin, which is third as far as unders are concerned. Again, they go under by an average of 4.7 a game. Lions and the Bengals, another one of those, regression to the mean things, go with a much worse turnover. Team is 574, 38, and 27. That would benefit the Bengals. Now, we do want to, in a name of equal time, it's kind of been static since 2014. It's been a virtual coin flip. And, that's a pretty long time. It hasn't gone in reverse. It just hasn't been all that great. So we still weigh that with other angles. Also going with big underdogs off a blowout loss, a very good play, 78 and 46. You know that I've admitted if there is a weakness as me as a handicapper, Joe Duffy picks at offshoreinsiders.com. At times I become a little bit too obsessed with my metrics and my computer and all that other stuff. But you know that I'm not a fan of Matt Stafford. Do like the idea of going against Matt Stafford in a must-win game as a road favorite. That might be a hint to one of my premium plays at offshoreinsiders.com. Now, the Bengals, despite a 7-7 against the spread record, they're actually the second worst margin. Sweat barometer, some of you know it, in the league is minus 4.9. Again, what that essentially says, when they're covering by close margins. When they're not covering, they're failing to cover by pretty large margins. That's why, if you do believe in spread statistics, you want to balance out the margin of cover or sweat barometer or ATS margin, whatever the hell you want to call it, against the spread record. Now, the Lions have gone over 9-5, tops in the league, but +5, which is tied for third. Bengals have several key players in concussion protocol. Linebacker Vontaze Burfict, running back Joe Mixon, cornerback Drake Kirkpatrick. Must-win situation for the Lions, as we said. Now, again, years ago, generally going against must-win teams when the other team was in a spoiler situation used to be a great play. It's not so much in recent years. The theory being the teams aren't quite as loyal to players and vice versa. And also the fact with, the high injury, as the players become bigger and stronger, players who are also RADs are less likely to go all out at the end of the year when they're out of the playoffs. Buccaneer, and a quick story. I think I told you, those of you who did watch around Thanksgiving, that my allergies traditionally are the worst around Thanksgiving, and I was quite thankful that this year had been the big exception, and thank you to everyone who's given us a like. The experts tell us this will help us in search engine, whether you're watching live. We do a rebroadcast that we send to YouTube, so if you can give us a like, that will really help us. It tells you love this information. But instead, my worst allergies are... Now, I guess my allergies got confused. They gave up Thanksgiving, but instead, brutal week for allergies. I'm drugged up with over-the-counter stuff. I only use legal drugs, some over-the-counter stuff, so hopefully I can get through this broadcast despite. All right, and I'm actually using a little bit different software, and let's see, I'm sorry. Jessica Lions struggled the first half, usually do better during the second half. I like them against the Bengals. That's true. With the predictably unpredictable quarterbacks, and one of the things that I have not yet done, and I'm using a different version of the same software, so now this is a little different. I actually got to click. All right, now I can look at it over here. All right, now I do see your comments. I will address them. Like I said, because we're using a beta version of the same software, that caused some hecticness doing my sound check. But yeah, I do see I have quite a few comments. Jessica, with guys who are predictably unpredictable, it's one of those things. I don't actually bet live lines, and I probably should. By the time the games come, I'm so bleeping exhausted, and I've got so much money down on both the, the sides and the totals. And, of course, got to win these games for my customers. It is my entire livelihood in so many ways. But with live lines in a case like Matt Stafford, or, Jay Cutler was this way, Jeff George, I do think that Stafford's one of these guys. If he is way ahead, you bet against him on the live line. If he's way behind, bet with him on the live line. It is true. Matt Stafford is one of the better come-from-behind quarterbacks. But you got to keep in mind, because he's Matt Stafford, he's playing from behind too often. But I do agree with you, Jessica. A very, very astute comment. Yeah, thank you, Gil. I think I did. Yeah, we talked about that. Yes, and I think I saw, yes, Justin, how are you? Yes, live on Christmas. I've been doing this a long, long time. Do not have days off. It's ironic. Sometimes on Christmas Eve, it's one of the rare days I do sneak in an extra hour or sleep or so. Not today. But yeah, there are no holidays in the handicapping business, and I wish I was live last week. I told what may or may not be an interesting story at the top of this report about how crazy last week is. But yeah, you better believe it. I will be here, I guess, Sunday, New Year's Eve morning. I'll be here with your tailgate party as well. The Buccaneers and the Panthers, very key here. Christian McCaffrey, of course, got off to a slow start. He is now finally living up to, and really, if anything, the last 6 weeks, even exceeding expectations. You always hear about rookies hitting the proverbial wall. Christian McCaffrey's been just the opposite. Slow start. But the last 6 weeks averaging 5 yards per carry, last 6 games with 5 touchdowns. Buccaneers also ran. This is a game for the Panthers where they definitely do need to win this game, to say the least. Rams and the Titans. Rams with a league best plus 9.2 against the spread margin. Sweat barometer, etc. They are 9-5 ATS. Rams have gone over 9-5, which is tied for tops in the league. But plus, they've gone over by an average of plus 5, which is tied for third. Yes, Demetrius Davis, Denver, we do. We're about to discuss that game. We do discuss virtually every game every week. I think there are some exceptions, and one of the reasons, I'm running with a chicken without a head, we were adding some last-minute notes, and I was actually surprised. I had a couple games that, as of this morning, I didn't have any major notes on, so we were adding some stuff. We are going to talk about that Broncos game in a moment, but yeah, that's another one where the Rams, again, if you look at mere spread record, they would be the biggest over team. If you look at the margin that they've gone over, they would be among the biggest over teams. Now, again, that's, for more of an evergreen type thing. How do we use trends? How do we use the sweat barometer and handicapping? I like to do a little bit of both. I both opine, but I also like the, for those of you who are joining us maybe for the first time, this goes back to our old score phone days. I've been doing this since 1988 and even before this, where we used to give pregame information on the old score phones, and we really took the we'll report you decide approach rather than make the decisions for you. So I do a little bit of both. I report, I know what the gamblers want, and I will opine on whether or not they're relevant. But the Jaguars and the 49ers, and let me do my weekly, let's sound sophisticated, the Jaguars. And by the way, Merry Christmas to everybody. Like I said, cut a little closer to normal with our start. The Duffy family, as I implied at the beginning of this, we celebrate both Christmas and Hanukkah. And those of you celebrating Kwanzaa as well, and when I think Ramadan, that's October, if I'm not mistaken. But, whatever holiday, Festivus, of course. How can you not be a Seinfeld fan? Whatever you're celebrating, and winter solstice. Look, we're very inclusive. We judge people by whether they're good people, not what holidays they celebrate. So happy any holiday or no holiday that you're celebrating. But the Jaguars plus 9 against the spread margin and 9-5 against the spread record. Both are second in the NFL. The Jacksonville will be without wide receiver Marquez Lee. My fellow wide receiver Allen Hurns could be a game-time decision. Now, here's a shocker. Statistically, Blake Bortles is the best quarterback in the month of December. Obviously, as we know, 49ers are arguably much better than the record now that they've greatly improved the quarterback situation. Perfect example of why sometimes, you got to look past all the computer angles, and that is the biggest thing to handicap. Is this 49ers team? This 49ers team, I think, might even be better than 500 quality at this point, with the big trade that they did make with the Patriots. All of a sudden, they're relevant. It's a dangerous situation for Jacksonville. And stunningly, with Blake Bortles going from a bust. I was one of these guys, so it turns out I'm right after all. I love athletic quarterbacks. Thought Blake Bortles was going to be a steal. One of the few quarterbacks, look, I know our memories are convenient. One of the few quarterbacks I was wrong about, I thought Jake Locker was going to be a stud quarterback, and he turned out not to be. I was right about Aaron Rodgers. I thought Aaron Rodgers was a steal. Then it looked like Blake Bortles was going to be the next Jake Locker, a great athletic quarterback who just made bad decisions. But all of a sudden, Bortles, he's a quality quarterback. The 49ers all of a sudden got a good quarterback situation. Maybe take a look at the over. This isn't, let me just throw that in as a bonus free pick. We'll go with the over. All right, Demetrius, you did ask about the Broncos and the Redskins. Denver 4-9 against the spread with a league worst sweat barometer at minus 5.5. This might be one of our premium picks at offshoreinsiders.com, by the way. Joe Duffy's picks. Look, Skins running back, Samaje Perine, he's questionable, though he says he'll be fine. 156 carries for 547 yards. Broncos 1-8 ATS on the road. We talk about quarterback situations. Look, Denver is a team much like the 49ers. They all of a sudden actually get a quarterback. They could go from one of the worst to first. And I think people don't, we thought when Peyton Manning won the Super Bowl that he had gone to being an average quarterback. Look, when you have a quarterback, all the intangibles, the leadership, I think we're realizing Peyton Manning, when he won the Super Bowl, is actually a much more valuable quarterback than we actually thought. And we've seen that since Peyton Manning has retired. But Denver, one of these teams where they're tremendous at every position but the quarterback position. I've said it before, kind of editorializing. Not so sure John Elway is a great evaluator of quarterbacks. He's drafted some pretty crappy ones. Giants in Arizona. Arizona 4-9 against the spread with the third worst against the spread margin at minus 4.7. Of course, the Cardinals with Stanton at quarterback, third quarterback they've used this year. Giants stud Jason Pierre-Paul is expected to play despite a broken finger. One of the most exciting games to watch, the Falcons and the Saints. Falcons, the top under team in the NFL by a margin of minus 5.8, going under 9.5. Remember, they were the top over team last year, no question. So much is based on the previous year's perception. So the fact that Falcons went from a great over team to an under team isn't really a shock. Of course, their defense, especially in the secondary, a little bit better. Pass rush as well. The big story here, look, this line is very likely to move. And let's see if I set up my, as I said, I cut it close. There you go. I'll forget about it. I had to set up some stuff. I was going to show you where we can do just the screen and show the latest odds. But this line is going to move based on the injury information, latest breaking news, and people listening to the pregame shows for Michael Thomas. Saints Pro Bowl wide receiver is 50-50. Only second player in NFL history with 90 catches and 1,000 yards in his first 2 years. 19 catches the past 2 weeks. So that line's going to go crazy depending on his injury status. Pretty much a must-win for both, but especially the Falcons. Both of these teams need it. Saints could lose and still make the playoffs, but both of these teams have to take care of their own business, so to speak. Our free pick, though, here is under the 52.5. This line is just a little bit too high. Clearly, these are two of the most improved defenses in the league. They are not necessarily two of the best defenses, but perception-wise, the line is just too high at 52.5. We like this game under. And again, if you like this information, let me move this around. Of course, I have apologize for that. I do have some sensory issues. And I probably should have worn one of my collared shirts where I can click this on a little bit better. But the Chargers and the Jets. Chargers have gone under 10-4, tied for the biggest under team based on record. Second best under team in terms of margin at minus 4.9. Jets 20-9 as home underdogs. Chargers they do still have a playoff shot. They're in a must win. They got to look at the scoreboard, but they still have a chance to sneak into the playoffs. And Jessica. Lovely Jessica. We always love those female viewers, female clients. Phillip Rivers, another guy we talked about. We talked about Matt Stafford. Phillip Rivers, another guy. If he's ahead, I would bet against him on the live line. When he's trailing, you don't want to bet him against a live line. He's another guy who's a great come-from-behind quarterback, but it's because he's often trailing. And, thank you. It looks like we have a pretty decent number of live listeners. I think, roughly 30% of our viewers do watch us live on Facebook with this software where I can easily send it to other places. But we do appreciate all of you watching us live. Merry Christmas or whatever holiday you do. celebrate. Help spread the word. Just give us a like. Always, comment. Tell us where you're watching from. I'm always curious, if we have viewers from all over the world. I told the story of a podcast I'm on. It turns out, by happenstance, a childhood classmate was listening to that podcast and contacted me. So always fun, tell us where you're watching from. And if, unlikely event for the second time this year with somebody who knew me in a previous life, maybe even you knew me from my Score Phone days, just say hi. I love those small world stories. Bills and the Patriots. Bills wide receiver Kelvin Benjamin is questionable. Bills are as it stands, Bills are the first team out of the playoffs, the proverbial if the season ended today. But that's on a tiebreaker. They're in a definite must-win situation from motivation standpoint. Dolphins and the Chiefs. Kansas City's going under 14 straight off of a win by more than a touchdown when their opponent has forced an average of fewer than 1.25 turnovers per game season to date. Now, the Chiefs are the proverbial if the season ended today. They're in the playoffs, but they're definitely in a must-win situation. Cowboys, again, this line's going to move because of some injury stuff. Remember, left tackle Tyron Smith, perhaps the Pokes' best offensive lineman. We know how much they missed him when he was out. He is considered probable. The big story here, Ezekiel Elliott is back for the Cowboys. That brings back the play-action pass, to be honest with you. I think if the line overreacts, if it's announced that Smith is not going to play, I think some people might overreact because the Cowboys struggled with him out of the lineup, but I think that had as much to do with the fact Ezekiel Elliott was out in the play-action pass, and the fake and the RPO. So much more effective with Elliott in the lineup. And really, if the line starts moving Seattle's direction, I think the Cowboys become a better play. This is a must-win for both. The Seahawks would be eliminated from the playoffs. Cowboys need to win out. And look at the scoreboard. Seattle's a bit shorthanded, and they're feuding. All right, now some Christmas Day stuff. We gave you 2 free picks on this report. Christmas Day stuff. Steelers and the Texans. Houston, top over team, exceeding the total by an average of 7.5 points per game. Yet they've only gone over 7-7 this year. So again, if you look at the mere spread margin, Houston's going over only half of their games. I'm sorry, if you look at the mere spread record, even I keep confusing the terms. Spread record is Salisbury, Maryland. I think I've gone through there on 295. Salisbury State College. Jessica, Maryland's a cool state. And the one thing I don't like about Maryland, those exits on the interstate, I don't know why everything's not off of the exits in Maryland on I-95. Jessica, if you could research that for me. Great crab cakes there as well. But if you're traveling for whatever reason, unless you're familiar with the exit, be careful about getting off of those exits in Maryland because you got to make a rest stop or whatever. It's amazing how stuff is so far over. Off of the exit John Johnson from Miami. Yeah, you're getting some nice weather for sure. Miami, another very cool city. Been there a few times. My father-in-law lives in Boynton Beach, so not too far from there. But Texans, the Houston's a top over team based on margin of cover. Of course, remember, most of that was with Deshaun Watson in the lineup. They were going way over the total with Watson. Yet again, now with, then they had Savage was starting to play better. But, Houston, a great over team according to the over-under margin. Not so much according to record, but of course, we've got to look past those statistics, and they've got a different quarterback. Now, wide receiver DeAndre Hopkins is questionable, 92 catches for 12 touchdowns. That is another one that, to say the least, his injury status is going to affect the line. Yeah, John, it's interesting because I have some friends. I know some friends are in Disney for, Christmas. I guess as somebody who grew up in New Jersey, I kind of like those cold Christmases. And Gil, yes, I'm a native of Marlton, New Jersey. I got to get to Trenton one of these days and eat some of those tomato pies. I'm a foodie, which is pretty obvious. The reason I'm a fat slob, I like good food. And I know Trenton is known for their tomato pies. I've had some tomato pies, but I got to get them in Trenton. D'Alessandro's is one of them, and I know there's another place known for their tomato pies. So I've been to Trenton. I grew up not too far from there. Even a high school teacher, my science teacher, Mr. Bertel. If you know Mr. Bertel, he used to drive from Trenton to Marlton every day. Very good science teacher. Raiders and the Eagles. Eagles, a league best, 10-4 against the spread margin, third best against the spread margin in the NFL at 7.1. Again, I use those terms interchangeably. I should say 10-4 against the spread record, their margin going over by 7.1. Philadelphia going over by 5.8, second in the NFL, but a modest 8-6 over record. They do have the luxury. Look, the Eagles are still playing. If they win out, they get home field advantage throughout the playoffs. They're battling through Minnesota for home field advantage in a potential NFC championship game. Raiders wide receiver Amari Cooper is questionable. 42 receptions, 5 touchdowns. Of course, the big story here, Nick Foles is a quarterback for Philadelphia. Carson Wentz is out for the year. And my allergies are catching up to me. So it's luckily we're towards the end of this broadcast. But yeah, Nick Foles had played very well. But remember, as a general rule of thumb, first game without a star quarterback, teams rally around that. There's a little bit less game film. They have the ability to catch teams off by surprise. From a handicapping standpoint, I would not assume that the Eagles are not going to miss a beat because, yeah, Nick Foles' record as a Philadelphia Eagle is quite impressive, obviously going back to his first tenure. But don't assume that because they were great last week, it was actually the defense that struggled, that, there's not a big drop-off. Biggest consensus, please. Washington, Pittsburgh, Rams, and a rare dog on Cleveland. And, we'll definitely, sorry, Gil, there you go. Finally happened. Gil, you're right. Definitely, as the morning approaches, take a closer look at the Steelers. Do have, some injuries. Fortunately, that game is, tomorrow. But yeah, that also a key. Both teams got to check on the status of, Antonio Brown, DeAndre Hopkins, to say the least. But yeah, rare dog is a consensus play on Cleveland. Some might call it a, contrarian play. But again, yeah, we'll be here next week. No more traveling is planned, so I really felt bad about missing our tailgate party for the only time last week, but we are back. We'll be back here New Year's Eve day. We'll spit that out. Happy holidays to everybody. Please join me again. Despite my hectic week, if you didn't hear about it, make sure you rewind, listen to this entire report. We got good information, plus a crazy story about what a crazy week. Despite no sleep, we're on a 20-5 run at offshoreinsiders.com. 9 straight Wise Guy winners, and we'll join you next week. Thank you for all the likes. If you're watching the rebroadcast, please likes, retweet, whatever you can do to help us get exposure, and we will talk to you next week.